Hello again, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Bulls Breakdown Wednesday, and here's why. The great Alden Loury standing by. Alden Loury standing by, editor, writer extraordinaire, and bowler. We'll get into that in a little bit. Turns out the guy's a great bowler. Before I go further down, we're going to be talking property taxes, ladies and gentlemen. Get ready for the deep dive. But before I do that, I have to address something with my beloved Chicago Bulls. Now, you know I'm prohibited by the young millennials who govern my life, particularly one named Dr. D, from talking about sports. But when Dr. D's not around, I always talk about sports. In fact, I kind of talk about it when he's around too. I can't help myself, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize. And to all you non-sports lovers out there, I'm going to make it relevant. You just watch the brilliance with which I make sports relevant to your life. As all of my dear guest knows, I'm obsessed with sports. I think about it. I watch it. I follow it. I need help. Yes, I admit that, Alden. I do need help. Psychiatric dependency I have on sports to get me through the misery of life. Not only Bulls and Bears and Cubs and Sox, but I reserve the right to jump on the University of Illinois bandwagon from time to time, even though I didn't go to the University of Illinois. So I'm kind of on that bandwagon right now. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the breakdown of my beloved Chicago Bulls. I am right now wearing a Chicago Bulls hat. I own over 30 Bulls hats. I have a chronic dependency on the Chicago Bulls, which is really strange and weird. And if Alden were my therapist, we would now spend an hour talking about it. But he's not my therapist, so he won't talk about that. But I will talk about this. The Bulls, ladies and gentlemen, whether you follow it or not, you need to know this. You need to know this to be able to engage a polite chit-chat at the next party you're at, okay? So even you WBEZ listeners who are tuning in because you want to hear Alden and you don't want to hear sports, this will help you at your next chit-chat gathering around the coffee maker or whatever, the water cooler. The Chicago Bulls it's like they're trying to be as bad as they can possibly be. This is some of the worst management that I have ever seen in my life as a sports fan. And I go back, ladies and gentlemen, I go back to before Alden Loury was born, before producer Chris was born, okay? That's how long I've been following sports, mainly in the city of Chicago, mainly sports teams in the city of Chicago. This Chicago Bulls team is as bad in terms of managing a winning team as any I've ever seen. And I want to give a shout out to Joe Colley, who covers the Bulls for the Chicago Sun-Times. Joe Colley, I don't know how you can watch this team. I know they pay you to do it, so there's that, okay? I watch them, and I don't even get paid. So anyway, Joe Colley had a great column today that delves into the latest mishaps with the Chicago Bulls involving a player named Jaden Ivey. Now, follow me where I'm going with this, folks. Jaden Ivey was once upon a time a very promising college basketball player who was drafted by the Detroit Pistons with the high pick. His knees fell apart. It happens. It happened here in Chicago with Derrick Rose. Like nobody can really predict whether a player's knees are going to fall apart when they draft him. You know what I'm saying? It's not something you can anticipate. And there are those who say, oh, no, Ben, you could look. No. Don't just disregard people when they say that. There's really no way you can tell that a player's knees are going to fall apart. His knees fell apart. And so the Detroit Pistons, this is not a league where people are nice, are looking to unload him. They don't want to sign him to his next big contract with bum knees. They got to get rid of him. So what they need to do is find a team willing to take a player with bad knees. Hence, the Chicago Bulls. Oh, bad knees? We'll take you on our team. So the Bulls, about a month ago, traded a perfectly serviceable shooter named Herder. You don't need to know anything else about him, ladies and gentlemen, to get Jaden Ivey. Bad knees and all. There was a song that goes like skinny legs and all. Bad knees and all. Then it turns out he's got another affliction, which has nothing to do with knees. He's a lunatic. He's got this really bizarre need to preach. Listen, man, I whatever rocks your boat. I don't hate anybody for their religious beliefs. Okay. But I don't know. Can you imagine if you had a bowling team, 5 guys and one guy constantly, everything was an excuse to preach about religion? Every ball you shot, well, it was a gutter ball. Well, that's because you don't believe in the Lord, Ben. If you believed in the Lord, you wouldn't have done that gutter ball. That's how this guy is. And then it gets wackier. It's not just belief in the Lord, but all kinds of attitudes about Catholicism and gays And he made some pretty provocative out there statements on social media. And the Bulls said, enough is enough. When people became aware of some of these outlandish things he was saying, the Bulls cut him. So not only did they end up not having trading a player for bad knees, they effectively traded a player for nothing. They're the worst team in the league. So Joe Colley in today's column, he I give him credit. He's like, didn't anybody in the Chicago Bulls front office? Now I'm going to give you a name. People who don't follow sports are tourists. That's the first name. You don't need to know the last name. So when you're hanging around the water cooler, you could say, and you don't even have to give me credit for saying this. You could say, what was Arturas thinking when he traded for the player with the bad knees and this? And I'm now reading from the great Joe Colley. This is what he wrote, quote, before Ivy even stepped foot in Chicago, there were rumblings from Detroit that he was a, quote, preacher. Those rumblings undersold it. His interviews became sermons in which he asked reporters whether they had been, quote, saved and whether they had, quote, fornicated before marriage, unquote. My bad. I was just checking in on how your knees felt. That is a great line, Joe Colley. Hey, Sun-Times, give Colley a raise for that line. All right. That is a funny line. My bad. How's your knees? How's the fornicating going? Oh, no. And then Colley goes on. It's great that Ivy has religion in his life, but the relationship between reporter and player isn't built like that after just a few interactions. While reporters were left feeling as though they didn't need to be preached to by a 20-something-year-old kid, a few years removed from walking around with a silver spoon in his mouth on the AAU circuit, his Bulls teammates were left shaking their heads at the latest distraction foisted on them by the front office. End of quote. By the way, that's a great riff. The silver spoon, AAU. Folks, I know 90% of you have no idea what AAU is. Forget it. Don't worry about it. It's not worth you knowing. Okay, just forget that part of the quote. But everybody else who knows what AAU means, look it up, people. AAU. Google it. You'll see. They're like, oh, that's a great line, man. Yeah, golly, that's a great line. And so that brings me to this question. So, yeah, the Bulls dropped him. They got rid of him. They're just going to pay him. They're going to continue to pay him. They waived him. They goodbye. Just don't be around here with your toxicity, like talking about fornication before marriage or your weird attitude toward gays and Catholics, et cetera, and so forth. Just leave. Go. Bye. See you. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. We'll pay the money. All right. But here's the issue. What if he was good? What if the knees were strong? What if he was like the equivalent to basketball, what Alden Loury is to bowling, a great basketball player? I just did that for you, Alden. No, if he's the equivalent of, say, on our team, Wex, who's a really good bowler, okay? Better than me or Alden. We're about the same, Alden and me. Anyway, what if he were like Wex-like in his bowling, which is like a 200 average? Would they? I don't know, man. Would it matter that he's a nut? Would it matter if he's asking reporters about fornicating before their marriage? I don't know. That's a question to be really entertained. You know, if he were good. So is the greatest crime committed by the Bulls not that they traded for a lunatic who asked reporters whether they're fornicated before marriage, or that they traded for a guy who asked reporters whether they fornicated before marriage and has bad knees and can't shoot? That's the real question. That's the question you should be debating, ladies and gentlemen, if you're sitting around. Do they still have, like, coffee makers in office? I haven't been in an office in so long, since our studio closed at the Bright One. I don't even know if the Sun-Times had a coffee maker. Every now and then they had a party and they had free food. God, as I like to point out, you want to watch food disappear? Put free food in front of a reporter. Good God. It'd be like they never ate before. Oh, my God. Anyway, enough of me ranting and railing. Let's bring on the great Alden Loury. Alden, it's good to see you. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. That was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Loved every word of it.
So what do you think, Alden, before we take the deep dive into property taxes, which in contrast is so much more boring? But more important, okay? I won't say it's not important. Your thoughts. Would the Bulls have gotten rid of Ivy for all his nuttiness if he was averaging 25 points, if he was the Wex equivalent in basketball, averaging like 25 points, hitting the big 3-point shots, getting fans excited, getting people to buy tickets, would they have gotten rid of him?
I don't think so. I mean, I would imagine the front office, particularly the general manager, would be doing as much as they could to hold on. I mean, they've struck out big time. Golden Sombrero struck out with what they've done at the trade deadline. Nothing seemed to gel. The trades themselves just looked really puzzling. And the one saving grace could have been if one of the guys they picked up, all of whom I think were on expiring contracts, but if one of those guys really blossomed, and Ivy, at least on paper, is, especially if you hadn't been following him this year, a lottery pick is still growing and developing, I would say, and there's potentially a chance that he could have caught fire in the right environment, given a little more playing time. I would imagine that if any of these guys had performed like Wex, they would be trying to hold on to him no matter what, because it would be the one thing that they could point to and say, see, all of this turmoil that we've caused, all of these questionable deals that we made, we did get gold with one of them. And but Jaden Ivey certainly during the limited time he's been on the floor hasn't shown that, so he certainly was expendable.
Yeah, and so before we went on the mic, producer Chris pointed out there's a basketball player named Ja Morant. Oh my God! For you non-sports fans, I know I'm really overloading you, but Ja Morant is sensational talent, absolutely gifted basketball player, a blast to watch. But he's had, to put it mildly, off the court problems. He's had injuries lately as well. But the Memphis Grizzlies kept him around. They didn't cut him because he was really good. You get what I'm saying? So, like, his off the court problems. Now, in defense of Ja Morant, his off the court problems did not include asking reporters whether they had fornicated. I'm sorry, Ollie. Could you imagine if you were doing a story about property taxes and the assessor said to you, before I answer that question, Alden, have you fornicated before marriage?
I mean, who hasn't? I mean,
wait, who hasn't been asked that question, or who hasn't fornicated before marriage? All right, let's be serious, folks. Calm down. All right. So Alden is a writer and a columnist for the Sun-Times. You can read his columns in the Sun-Times. He's also an editor at WBEZ, and he's like kind of, and we all know him on the Ben Joravsky show as Chicago's foremost demographic authority. And as far as we're concerned on the show, his greatest contribution is pointing out like 6-7 years ago, the thousands of black people were leaving the city of Chicago, and the city of Chicago didn't really care, which is, we call that the Loury theory. So I brought you on because I have two obsessions that you addressed more or less in editing and doing the graphic arts for stories written by Violet Miller in the Sun-Times. One has to do with assessment, and the other has to do with property tax. They're interconnected, so it's really just one giant property tax story. And fascinating stuff. And that has to do with you joined two separate things together, showing how they're connected. One, our insane property tax assessment system, which is governed by the assessor's office, or the computers in the assessor's office, and then the political fallout from the insanity of our property tax system, which was voters blamed Fritz Kaegi, the incumbent, for the fact that their taxes went up, and drove him out of office and elected another Hines. I don't even know if voters even knew the Hines' first name, so I'm not even going to say his first name. They just, oh, Hines. I remember that. I remember his uncle? I think it was his uncle. Yeah, I remember that name. Yeah, I vote for Hines. Chicago voters and suburban voters. Anyway, fascinating joining of the two. And then there's the secondary issue of that the treasurer's report showing how much property taxes have gone up. We'll talk about all those things. Let's start with the first one. Voters blaming Kaegi. Take it away, Alden.
Voters, it certainly seems from the results and where the vote was strongest for Hines. And I get them confused. This is Pat Hines we're talking about, right?
Yes.
The nephew of Tom Hines, who was assessor many years ago, cousin to Dan Hines, who was also a political operative. And I believe there was another Hines that worked in Emanuel's office when he was mayor of Chicago. But yeah, very politically connected family. Southwest Side, 19th Ward. Do I have that right?
You have that correct.
Yes.
Very, very good.
So anyhow, the last 2 years, the tax years 23 and tax year 24, there were reassessments done in the south suburbs and then in tax year 24 in the city of Chicago. And the south suburbs were hit by the highest tax increases, single year tax increases they'd seen in at least 20 plus years. And several south and west side communities were hit with very similar super tax increases in tax year 24. So these were bills in the south suburbs that folks saw. Tax year 23, they saw those bills starting in 24. The south and west sides of Chicago that were hit with those increases started seeing those bills, I believe, in the fall of 25. And there was a lot of sticker shock. BEZ edited a story that Dora Namagade did for BEZ looking at the south suburbs in 24. And then last year, we did a story, some coverage around the property tax increases in the south and west side of Chicago. Nicole Janine Johnson did some of those stories also, along with what Violet did recently. Yeah, just those huge increases. And so there's been a lot of talk when we were doing the coverage of those tax increases, and of course, there were questions to the treasurer's office, who was issuing the reports that the data was a part of that we used for the analysis for those stories. And of course, Kaegi's office was also interviewed for those stories. And property taxes is, it's one of those really interesting, kind of very public issues. I mean, it's the form of taxes that seem to get talked about the most, that get the most attention, the most coverage, but it may be one of the most complicated ways in which the public is taxed. But when someone goes to the polls after getting a real super sharp spike in their property taxes, the person whose name is on that assessor's office is the name that typically gets blamed, unless there was some huge property tax increase that some government official backed. And in this case, especially when you're dealing with, since property taxes, there are tons of government bodies that contribute to what people actually pay in property taxes. And so when the city, if the city passes a property tax increase, everybody in the city is going to feel that, but they're also going to pay part of their property taxes for a whole host of other government bodies that are contributing to that. So unless it's a situation like that, where it's like, hey, so-and-so increased our property taxes and now they're this, we're going to blame them. Typically, it's going to be the assessor, because that's the person who's essentially determining, what your house is assessed at. But again, it's a very complicated field because there are all these different bodies that actually contribute to what your property tax bill winds up being. But like I said, the assessor is the one that gets the blame. And the thing that Kaegi was trying to do over the last couple of years in the aftermath of those increases was truly try to explain to folks what was kind of going on beneath the surface. Now, the thing that I think that he would leave out is that, particularly in these places where the property taxes had gone up a great deal, was that their assessments had actually gone up as well. However, there were other factors that contributed to those increases. And one of them was just the particularly for the South and West Sides in this latest round, was the shifting of the tax burden from a lot of downtown commercial office buildings and high-rise buildings that were seeing all kinds of vacancies and other things, kind of in the aftermath of this new work environment now, where we're not, coming into the office as much as we had been before the pandemic. It was one of the byproducts of learning how to work remotely during the pandemic. And a lot of companies, I think largely because their employees favored, a hybrid system, or if not a complete work from home system, really reduced the amount of time that they were requiring people to come into the office. And as a result, some folks, stopped their leases, or they downsized to a different workplace. And so there are a lot of vacancies in those downtown office buildings. And so the owners of those buildings have pretty much been saying, hey, look, we're not getting the revenue that we used to get. Our space isn't where it used to be. And as a result, we should be assessed at a lower amount. And Kaegi would point out, in the months-long roadshow he had going on, trying to explain to people what was happening, that led to their increases, was explaining that, hey, there were literally billions of dollars in assessment value that was lost because these downtown owners, building owners, were essentially appealing their taxes, and Kaegi was pointing the finger directly at the Board of Review in downgrading what those properties were worth. And that was his explanation, this shift in the tax burden. And to his credit, in the treasurer's report, she mentioned very clearly that there was, because there was less of the commercial property taxes being paid by these downtown office buildings, there was a heavier burden on everybody else that pays property taxes, namely residential property owners. And so those South and West Side neighborhoods that saw the biggest increases on percentage basis did so because not only was the burden larger for all residential property tax payers, but in particular, on a percentage basis at least, the folks who saw a higher assessment. So that's what happened. They not only did those South and West Side neighborhoods incur a greater burden because of less money coming from those commercial properties, but also because they had some of the highest increases in assessments for their properties. And so that's why they saw the highest increases. The South suburbs is slightly a different reason. In the South suburbs, and this is something I've said for years now about the South suburbs, I have great concern about the long-term financial viability of the Southland. It's an area, interestingly enough, it has a wide range of economic, you go from places like Riverdale and Fort Heights, lower income communities, a lot of, vacant land, buildings that are in disrepair. And then you go to a place like Flossmoor, which is now the highest income majority Black community in the state of Illinois, is recently identified as a majority Black community in the latest round of census data. Places like Hazel Crest and Olympia Fields, these are solidly majority Black middle class communities. But everywhere in the Southland struggles with regard to property taxes because there just isn't a whole lot of commercial development out in the Southland to balance out what folks on the residential side have to pay. And so they saw higher assessments and higher property taxes as a result. And part of the reason was because there was even a greater dip in terms of what the commercial properties are just available in any case, not necessarily because there was a shift in the tax base the way there was in the city. There just isn't much of a commercial tax base out there to begin with. So they got hit pretty hard. And so interestingly, when I believe Violet said that when she spoke with the folks in Kaegi's office leading up to the election, she says they were deeply concerned about the South suburbs. They're just deeply, deeply concerned. And there's been a lot of chatter lately, the last few months, after those first tax bills dropped, I think in November last year, October, November last year, around the city, the South and West Side. You had, prominent Black ministers, Ira Cree and Marshall Hatch, who were talking very loudly about their fear that folks are going to lose their homes because of the rapid increase in property taxes there. But for months, Kaegi's office has been hearing about the South suburbs, dating back to a year ago, and so they were really keenly concerned about what was going to happen out there. And what we showed in the map was when we had side by side maps in terms of the tax year 2023 increases from 2022 and the tax out in the South suburbs, and then the 2024 increases from tax year 2023 in the city. And the places where you had the brightest colors for property tax increases were the areas where you had the lightest colors in terms of the percentage of the vote that Kaegi got against Hines. And so very clearly the folks who were hit hardest by those property tax increases blamed Kaegi.
Yeah.
One table that I put together, we didn't publish it, that I did put together, when you looked at the vote in municipalities or in community areas that saw at least a 20% increase in their median residential property tax bill from 2022 to 2023 or from 2023 to 2024, Kaegi got like roughly 33%, somewhere in that range of the vote. Everywhere else in the county, Kaegi got just above 50%. So he was really hammered in the areas where property taxes took the biggest hit, and that very clearly cost him the election.
Yeah, and I could attest. I've said this on the mic many times, and I wrote it many times. Feeling, in fact, I would say my again using my therapist, my entire journalistic career in this century. Follow me about what to say, Alden. In this century, the century's already 26 years old, was like diverted by what you call that sticker shock. So I was kind of like, I follow property taxes in the 80s and the 90s, I write about them from time to time, but where it really hit home, I want to say the year was 2001. I would have to look it up. And there was an assessment on the north side of Chicago. And my property tax bill went from, I forget, like 1,000 to 4,000 and one. It was unbelievable. And, of course, it's true. I was a high-paid writer for the Chicago Reader, making I can't even say that with a straight face. But I was outraged.
That's the punchline.
By the way, back then I was still every night bowling at Timberlane. Just want to point that out.
Oh, wow, okay.
Some things haven't changed. Monday nights I'd be going to bowl. I'd be complaining to the other guy. So the assessor there, I love it. Violet Miller's story in the Sun-Times. She interviews Jimmy Houlihan, the assessor, and he's acting all professorial. Well, I know how this goes. I balance it. Oh yeah, Houlihan, I was screaming about you when my taxes went up in 2001. I didn't see you acting all professorial. Well, this is the system. It went up. Alden, I lost my mind, and that's when I began to do exploring TIFs and property taxes, like taking the deep dive. I became Captain Ahab, okay, and the TIFs and the property taxes with the great white whale. But I know the impact, and I feel very passionate about this. And my beloved lefties are so clueless when it comes to the property tax. For most people, our homes are our only significant asset, investment asset that we own. We don't, like most of us don't have huge portfolios. You get what I'm saying? This is it. You hit us with a tax on our only asset, Alden, forcing us to sell. You get what I'm saying? Which is what ultimately will happen. We could tie the two, like your studies of demographics, Black people leaving Chicago, property taxes. I would say Bronzeville, that was a huge factor, like in the area around Cabrini Green, in the area around Bronzeville. So I could never get my beloved lefties to take this as a serious issue. And like the centrist crowd, they needed that money so bad because this is the real problem. It's not Fritz Kaegi's fault. It wasn't Jim Houlihan's fault. It's this kid Hines that we just elected. he'll be as helpless as the rest of them. We're too dependent, Alden. This is me speaking. I'd love to get your thoughts. We're too dependent on a tax that people can't afford to pay. I don't know what else to say. Floss more. Okay, so those are wealthier people, but like Harvey, which is just up the road, they're not wealthy people in Harvey. If your taxes go up to pay for the schools in Harvey, your property taxes, I don't know if your income is going to keep pace. In fact, I know your income is not going to keep pace. So my taxes, you're better at math than I am. They went from 1,000 to 4,000. Figure out whatever that increase is. I can't do it because I'm dyslexic and I was terrible at math anyway, but you are good at math.
It's a 300% increase.
Okay, I can guarantee you that my reader's salary did not go up 300%. All right. What a joke. I'm screaming at Houlihan. What about my taxes? Ben, you have to understand the way the system works. Suddenly he's all explaining how the system works. So Alden, that to me is bigger problem, in my humble opinion, than whoever is the assessor. The assessor could kick because he'll be the scapegoat.
Right. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the funny thing is the assessor assesses is at least the starting point for the property, and then of course appeals could change that. But the assessor essentially sets the baseline. This is what your property is worth, and then what your share of the property taxes are based upon that, right? But the thing that the driving force for what as a collective community we pay in property taxes is not at all has anything to do with the assessor. That has to do with all the government bodies that contribute to the levy. And so, and the interesting thing is that the levy is the levy, right? That, it's like, okay, this government needs X amount of dollars, this government needs X amount of dollars, this government needs X amount of dollars, and all of that together is what the collective community pays, in property taxes. And then your share of it is dependent upon not just what the assessor assesses your property as, but it's the final point for everybody else's assessments. Yeah. And so if everybody else's assessments go down and yours goes up, well, you're going to be paying a whole lot more of that pie than everything else. And that's the whole thing that Kaegi was trying to get people to understand around commercial properties dropping and residential properties as a result having to take on more of a share of that. And all of that belies, doesn't even get to the point that you're making, which is, well, is this, as it's going up, can people actually even afford that? And of course, what they can afford doesn't factor into what people pay in property taxes either. One of the things that really jumped out at me in the treasurer's report, this latest report, which is looking at 30 years worth, and I love this. I wish every government body would put data out that lets us look at 30 years worth of something. So hats off to Pappas and her people for doing that. But was that over that 30-year period, property taxes had increased, it almost tripled. It was just below 200%, 182%, I believe it was. It was a faster growth than wages over that time. Yeah. So conceivably, everybody is paying more of their income now, or at least on average, everybody's paying more of their income toward property taxes now than they were 30 years ago. And it's twice, they've increased twice the rate of inflation, which is also interesting because there's actually a law on the books, although it doesn't apply to everybody. It doesn't apply to most municipalities in Cook County. It doesn't apply to TIF districts, and there are some other folks that this law doesn't apply to. But it's grown more than twice the rate of inflation, and that law tries to limit annual property tax increases to the rate of inflation of 5% or whichever is lower. And so even the safeguards that have been put in place, we've exceeded everything. And no matter what people are making, their property taxes are still growing faster than that. So, I was hoping to do this before the show, but I just didn't get a chance to. I was going to try to line up the median household income in these communities by what their growth had been, so we could see, depending on where you are in the county, how much property taxes have grown above what folks there are making.
Ooh,
and also
get
a sense of what share people are paying. Yeah. But you have places like Harvey and some other places that have maybe seen, talk about the folks in West Garfield Park, I think, which was the highest growth in the, I'm sorry, not over the 30-year period, but just in the past year. That was the highest where property taxes had increased. What do, and I don't think gentrification has really hit West Garfield Park yet, at least not in great numbers the way it has in East Garfield Park. So there are probably still a lot of folks who are just getting by there, and that, I think that was the concern of Reverend Acree and Reverend Hatch. It's like, these are folks that we're worried about in terms of being able to hold on to their homes in the face of those increasing taxes.
So there's a way to end this right now. And this is something I've been talking about since the turn of the century. People laugh. And in fact, we had Kaegi on. Maybe he'll speak differently now. He came on the show a month ago. It's called acquisition-based assessment. And what it does is essentially freezes your assessment basically at what you purchased the house for. So follow me in this, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a homeowner in Harvey, just say Harvey, and you purchase your house in 1980 for, let's make it easy, $10,000. Okay. And now it's worth, I don't know, let's make it easy, $100,000 on the market. Let's just say, okay, just for the sake of argument, make the numbers easy. Your taxes will go up by roughly that percent at least, because every time somebody sells a house in your neighborhood for more than you purchased it, the value of your house will rise according to the assessment. But if you do by acquisition, your house will be permanently frozen, assessed at $10,000. Your taxes won't go up. I've been suggesting this, Alden, since Houlihan sent me that bill or that assessment. It wasn't the bill. It was Pappas sending me the bill. I saw that bill, I've been suggesting this. And when I sent it to Fritz Kaegi, again, he said, no, you can't do that. There is such a resistance in Cook County and Chicago to any kind of fundamental change. This city, Alden, I know you have a great love for it. You were born here. You were raised here. You root for all the teams. But we are so stuck in our ways. We will stick with something no matter how stupid it is, no matter how guaranteed it is to bankrupt us. We have a system of funding our schools, Alden, that are going to bankrupt the people who need the schools, and we're sticking with it because, damn it, that's the way it's always been done in Chicago. Help me out, Alden. I don't understand the people in the city of Chicago. It's not like this assessment problem just happened in this last election. You get what I mean? It was going on. And by the way, residents of the West Side, gentrification will cause your taxes to go up. As soon as the property starts increasing, the sales prices increase, Alden, it's going to go up no matter what. You want to stay in your house for the rest of your life? You want to give your house to your kid? You want to pass it on as an asset? You can't do that, Alden, if the property taxes are too high to afford. Is there any part of that rant that you completely disagree with?
No, I wouldn't say completely disagree with. I would say that, well, you're spot on. We have a very kind of perplexing problem where we are right now, and I would say in many ways it's structural. We are so cash strapped, I think, in terms of where we are. I just look at the city. Ben, I was beside myself when I was seeing some of our coverage around the budget hole. I mean, we were like more than $1 billion, $1 billion, Ben, $1 billion. It almost made me feel not so bad about my own personal finances, which are in the toilet. I was thinking to myself, at least I'm not $1 billion in the red, and I guess it should have made me feel a little bit better, but then I looked at my own stuff and I was like, oh boy, well, it's not $1 billion, but it's still pretty bad. But $1 billion, that's how tight our finances are locally. And not every government bodies is in that bad a shape, but Chicago Public Schools every year is in tough. They're in this structural deficit. The city's structural deficit is at enormous proportions right now. And it's like we can't let go of anything that we have. And the thing about property taxes, it's hard to understand, but it's one of the most reliable funding sources for government bodies. And for that reason, I think it's hard pressed that, and it's also one of the few, at least very, in terms of the amount of revenue you can generate, that you have control over. I mean, people, the folks that lead the county, that lead the city, that lead school districts, they have the ability to raise taxes, or they can at least put a referendum on the ballot that will ask voters if they will approve a property tax increase. Everything else, you got to go to this. Well, not everything else, but most of the other things that could give you some revenue, you got to lean on somebody else to bring that in. You got to lean on businesses. You got to lean on the state. This is the one financing resource that government entities have some control over. So when they need money, that's where they can lean on. And like I said, it's a fairly reliable source, because like I said, the levy is the levy. So when the levy's set, somebody's going to pay it. It might be the new business that came into town, it might be the longtime homeowners who may not have it, but everybody's going to, everybody who's liable has to pay.
And you can't mess around with the property tax. I'll repeat what I said. For most people, not Bruce Rauner, not Rahm Emanuel, but most people, your home is your biggest asset. So it's where you live. Okay. So if you fall behind on your property taxes, they're going to kick you out of your home. You can't play with the property. It's one thing I told every millennial as they work their way up. You cannot mess around. Two things. Do not fall behind on that credit card bill. Please. Are you many millennials, Alden? I said, I will pay your property. Tell me, don't fall behind on that credit card bill. That's just straight up. And the other one is property tax. Cannot fall behind. This is stuff I learned from my depression parents. You get what I'm saying? These are lessons passed down. Don't fall behind on that property tax bill. You'll lose the property. And you wrote a great essay in the Sun-Times. Did we talk about that on the mic, or we just talk about it at bowling? I can't remember. Go find Alden's essay about fixing up a house. Remember that? That was a great essay, man. It was a column in the Sun-Times. And but you cannot play around, and they know they got you. That's really the answer why they stick to it. You hit it on the head, Alden. It's guaranteed money. People are gonna pay it. They got no choice. And so they won't move from it. Like, we could have moved a little bit from it with the fair tax, which would have raised the income tax on the richest people. It didn't pass. It didn't. I'd like to see a correlation between the no votes on the fair income tax and the votes for Hines. All those dummies who voted on the no on the raising the fair tax, desperately voting for Hines because they're like, I need help. I'm sorry to laugh, but it's so painful. By the way, I want to point something out about Maria Pappas. And the treasurer, she just issued this report. This is a brilliant political move, in my humble opinion. So shout out Maria Pappas. So look at there are 3 county officials involved in determining, involved in the property tax. I'll just say that way. One is the assessor, who figures out the assessment. One is the clerk, Monica Gordon, whose office figures out what the rate will be that you have to apply the assessment. And the other is the one who bills you. And that's the treasurer, Maria Pappas. And Maria Pappas, since she took office, I forget when she took office, has been very focused and determined in sending out a message to the voters of Cook County that I, Maria Pappas, am not responsible for your property taxes. Yes, it is my office that sends you the bill, and my name is on the bill, but I am not responsible. And I make fun of Illinois voters. I say how dumb they are, but they are smart enough to figure that one out.
And she collects what people pay. Is that right?
That is correct. Her name is literally on the bill.
Maria Pappas, right?
She's no dope, that Maria Pappas. She got that kid Hal Dardick working for her, all these guys, you old reporters, but she's smarter than all of them. She's like,
and she is. I would say to her credit, she's been doing these reports for several years now, but the timing does seem to be pretty advantageous for her politically because she's running for mayor, right? Which is an election that I don't know if people realize. I mean, we're about a year away from it
yes,
now.
we are.
So.
She's already now. So I'm going to say this, Maria Pappas. You know, I've asked you this in the past. See, all these people have dealt with me since I got that sticker shock. Maria Pappas, you did your report. I love the report. Good job, Hal Dardick and all the rest in their office. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash, but you got to get that TIF tax on the property tax bill. Come on, Maria. I've been telling you that's in 2001, and you guys still haven't done it yet. So this is my pet peeve. The amount of money, following this, Alden, that Alden Loury, you own property in Chicago, correct? Or you are
not any longer. One of the things I mentioned in that column you were talking about.
That's right. That's right. Okay. All right. I'll think. Oh, let's just use our mutual friend Mick Dumke, the great Mick Dumke. I don't know if he's a good bowler, but he's an outstanding softball. Isn't he a good softball player?
Pretty good softball player. Yeah.
Notice he said pretty good because that's his way of saying I'm better. But anyway, Mick Dumke has property. He owns property in Chicago. When he gets his property tax bill, just like the rest of you out there, it doesn't tell you how much you're paying in a TIF tax. And so Maria Pappas in her office in this last property tax report, to her credit, figured out how much money Cook County property taxpayers as a whole, how much money is going to the TIFs, you know, the total billion, what is it, like some $1 billion? I forget how much it is. But those property tax bills,
$20 billion, I think.
Damn, 20 billion?
Yeah, it's like 19, I think, and some change.
Over the last, since total for the last 30 years, right? Or not a year. Not a year.
No, it was
it
was 6.8 billion in 1995, and it's like just over 19 billion.
Damn,
now.
That's crazy. Anyway, your tax bill doesn't tell you how much you pay for the tax. They leave that out. They leave that out. They've been leaving that out forever because they don't want you to know, people. Okay. Oh my God. So, Alden, what correlation, in your humble opinion, is there between our dependency on the property tax and the fact that it's going up, and these demographic changes that you and I have been talking about for years?
Oh wow. You know, I don't know. I mean, you know, on it, I would say in an anecdotal sense, we could say some of the neighborhoods that have seen a decline in population, Inglewood, West Inglewood, West Garfield Park, North Lawndale. Now, keep in mind, these are communities that have been seeing population loss for decades. I mean, in the 1960 might have been Inglewood's peak year. So we talk about Black population loss kind of starting in 1980, a little bit less in 1990, a little less than that in 2000. And then we saw that huge drop from 2000 to 2010. And then about half that drop, but still the second largest drop in the 10-year period in Black population in the city from 2010 to 2020. And we're still seeing that decline continue since then. But in Inglewood, that population loss was starting as far back as 1960. So I wouldn't say that property taxes increases are necessarily the driving force, but perhaps, at least in some sense, it is contributing to it. The communities that have seen those same communities I mentioned have seen at least in the last year or two, these sharp increases, among the sharpest in the city, are also places that have seen over the last couple of decades or so, just properties fall into just really poor condition in a number of places. And we've seen a lot of people lose their homes because of high property tax, not being able to pay their property taxes. The scavenger sale, which I don't know if we're even going to be doing anymore, but what was happening every other year, I want to say. It wasn't happening every year or every 3 years, can't remember exactly. But those are properties that the delinquent taxes just wouldn't get sold in the annual sale, and so they would have this what they call scavenger sale, And those were really the properties that were just really in bad shape, and where folks were having the hardest time trying to get caught up on their delinquent property tax bills. And those places largely in Black communities. And so those are the communities that we're seeing their people losing their homes to tax foreclosure on a percentage basis more than anywhere else in the county. And so I would say there is a correlation to some degree that people losing their homes to delinquent property taxes is I would say a small share of that population loss. It's a much bigger picture, but yeah, it's a part of that puzzle.
Or not just literally losing your home in a delinquent sale, but just feeling compelled to sell your home. And so I know this story from people I know who used to live around Cabrini Green, and that area around Cabrini Green. I got to help millennials in Chicago, north side of Chicago, roughly Division. And Halstead, Sedgwick, around there, used to be a predominantly Black community. When I first moved to Chicago in the 80s, it was I would say 99, 100. You got to look up the census, Alden, but it was a Black community.
Yeah,
and it is it's completely changed. I think it's overwhelmingly white and upscale now. And I watched in real time people I knew selling their property. Like, Ben, I'm cashing in. I can get more. I'm going to move. And then they would be like, I'm going to sell this house, and I'm going to go to fill in the suburb, fill in the city in Indiana. I'm going down to Indiana. I'm going to move to the south suburbs, et cetera, so forth. I can get a house for a fraction of the price and bankroll the rest, and and I don't have to pay these taxes. I heard this so much. So these people didn't literally lose their house in delinquency. They just cashed in, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's when the light went on. I'm like, oh wow! Like the Mayor Daley, he was pledging that he was going to increase gentrification. He was going to be a generator of gentrification. Essentially, what he was saying, Alden, by doing that is, I'm moving people out of the city.
It's the plan, the plan for transformation within the plan for transformation.
That is correct. Yes. And it's like, I don't know of a mayor since who hasn't talked about. Wasn't that what? Remember when they were going to get Amazon's money to put their headquarters here? I was going to transform the city and we were going to pay Amazon. My bad. I had the dyslexia kicked in. I had it reversed. We were going to pay Amazon. Do you follow me, Alden, on this?
Yeah. I mean, no, you're right there, and I think that's a perplexing thing when gentrification starts slowly happening in the community, and I think there's a lot of different thoughts about this. There's some who say, fight to, we got to do something about, rent. We got to do something about property taxes, so people who are renting in places in these communities, people who've owned property there, can remain. And then you have some who say, well, it's a sad story if you have to move because you can't afford rent there anymore, or because you can't afford property taxes and you have to sell. But, maybe you take the money and you sell. Well, particularly for the renters, I guess, are just kind of SOL. But the property owners, some say, well, I get it. Certainly, that's not the thing that you were envisioning, but it perhaps should be seen as an opportunity. Sell, get as much as you can, and relocate somewhere else. Either way, it is telling just about the ways in which communities shift, and the fact at the bottom end of the day, no matter how you see it, is that people of a certain income can't be in communities that see tons and tons of investment, because not only did the higher wealth move into that neighborhood around Cabrini, but damn near everybody else moved in from this place, this retail outlet to that chain to this. This is the neighborhood all in and of itself. Folks there were starving for outlets where they could shop, or where they could buy groceries and high end things like that. and they never came. And when the towers came down and the neighborhood changed, like then there's all this investment, all these amenities, all these wonderful things that everybody wants in their neighborhood, but by and large, only communities of some wealth and income are the ones where that kind of investment is made. And it, and you see this thing happening all over the city right now. We're having conversations about, I mean, Woodlawn has been starving for many years for a number of investments to come in. South Shore has been starving for many years, and now we have the OPC. I mean, we're on the precipice of the OPC opening, and at least we've seen some. We've seen some evidence of investment coming in, but I imagine once that property is up and open to the public, and especially if it gets the kind of buzz that it seems conceivable that it will, the attention, there's going to be just scores and scores of investment, and the things that folks in those communities have been starving for. They've been fighting, trying to find ways to keep costs down so they can stay in the community, so they can finally take advantage of the investment that they've been crying for many decades even. And unfortunately, the probable outcome is that they're just not going to be able to afford to stay.
Absolutely.
And the investment will come and they won't be there to reap the benefits of it.
The OPC, Obama Presidential Center, that's the acronym that Alden's alluding to. If you want to prevent that kind of wholesale transformation, the fastest convenient way to do it is freeze assessments. So if the Obama Presidential Center comes in and as a result brings in outside investors and who are circling, I won't say like vultures, they're circling to get people to buy, or there's big retail coming in and property values are going up. Freeze assessments for the homeowners who currently live there. Come on, let's go, City Council. Let's do it. You can do it. Come on, Maria Pappas and Monica Gordon and Baby Hines. All of you can do it. Just freeze the assessments. Better yet, kick them back to where they were 10 years ago. Let's just cut the assessments. And then it won't be a forced driving people out. But they don't want to do that because they want that money. They want that tax dollars because they're too chicken to raise any other tax. You know what I'm saying? So they're just going to pretend like they care about people getting forced out of their homes while forcing them out of their homes. Am I being unfair?
You're not being unfair. I mean, it's a big problem. It's a problem we run into time and time again. There are a number of things that need to change. I would say one of them is that can't places of moderate to low income have decent investment in their community? Can we pave the streets? Can we clean the roads? Can we make sure that the storefronts are all filled? Can we give them amenities that they deserve, just like everybody else? That's one part of the issue. But the other part is, do we need to manage our finances, our local governments, much better so that we don't have billion-dollar deficits where we're scrambling to find resources for them? And it's easy to say. It's easy to sit in the peanut gallery and to say,
yes, it is.
Mayor Johnson, you're not spending money wisely. Your budget office isn't, it's I don't know how big the budget is now, $15-16 billion, whatever it is, crazy. Okay, so we've been doing this, it's been costing this much, so now we want to cut back. So what do we cut? What do we trim? Wherever we look, somebody's going to be crying foul. So it's an enormous job. I don't envy the folks who are running these governments and have to deal with this. But the bottom line is that we're, just like my finances, we're spending too much.
Yeah,
we're not making enough. So if we don't have the capacity to generate a lot more without squeezing people, then we got to figure out a way to squeeze ourselves, at least on some level.
Yeah.
The mayor tried with the ring, although you can make the argument that there were other needs that we have, and even Bring Chicago Home passes to help with the unhoused and services to the homeless. We're still going to need money for schools. We're still going to need more money for this or for that. But there was an attempt to try to go after seemingly a population that could maybe afford it, and the public at large did not approve that, which was interesting. But yeah, there's a whole host of things that we've got to figure out how to do better. Freezing the assessments would be great, but yeah, at the end of the day,
it just passed
$1 million deficit.
It would just pass the burden from the folks whose assessments are frozen to everybody else. I understand that. But if you want to, I'm just saying, if you truly care about preventing the mass displacement that the Obama Center may bring in, then you would freeze assessments. That's how you would do it.
Yeah. I mean, folks who are clamoring for rent control as another way, that particularly for help for folks on the renter side, and that generated some provocative conversations, but it hasn't really led to any kind of widespread reform. So yeah, we're unfortunately the wheel of gentrification, the crushing wheel of gentrification, may continue to roll on in this case.
Man, so we're run out of time, so I'm going to come at you with a total curveball that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to test Alden's powers of prognostication in the closing minute of this show. This show will probably air after the next champion of men's college basketball is decided. As we speak, as we do this recording, it's just before the Final Four, and as I said, Alden's beloved Fighting Illini is in the mix. They're playing UConn on Saturday. If they prevail, they'll probably go up against Arizona for the championship. That's my prediction. And Illinois has never, as in NEVER. Have they ever been in the Final Four? I'm not sure they've ever been in the final. They made the Final Four.
They've been in the Final Four twice in my lifetime.
You're right. Twice. I meant the final game. Yes, they've been in the
final.
No,
I don't think they've been in
I don't think they've ever made it past the Saturday game and Monday's game. That's what I was trying to say. So yes. So here you go. In your humble opinion, will Illinois A, win on Saturday? And B, win on Monday to be the champion, or will they lose on Saturday and not even make it to Monday's game? Go ahead.
Well, I'm a homer, so I could not to your faithful audience dare to prognosticate against my alma mater. So they will, and I believe also third time's the charm. I almost cried.
Oh no!
In 1989, when they lost that semifinal game to Michigan, I swear the key putback that won it for the Wolverines was had because there was a push off underneath the basket. The refs didn't call it. The Illini lost. That was the famous Dick Vitale made a famous Flying Illini. A great team, incredible team to watch, and that was supposed to be their year. Michigan, of course, went on to win the title. So they didn't win that year. I was at a fantasy baseball draft with Nick and a bunch of his family and friends in 2005, 2006.
Yeah, 2005.
When they had Darren Williams, really another really good team. And they lost that game, nail biter. They ended up losing that one in the Saturday game. So third time's the charm. This year, the Illini get past Saturday, and they win it all on Monday night, and that would be a fantastic cap to this year. And they've got and I haven't followed them closely in years, but I watched some of the game against Houston. I watched some of the game against Iowa, and they fell behind really early to the Hawkeyes, and they hung on and came back. So they've got a really interesting squad. They've got a lot of size. They've got versatile playmakers. They pass the ball well. They can beat you from inside. They can beat you from outside, and they defended well. So I like their shots as much as I like those other teams. I don't know if I can put anybody above the Flying Illini. That was just a fantastic team. But this is a really well-rounded team. They do a lot of things well. They're solid, and they've shown some toughness. And so I like their chances. The road's going to be tough. These are some really good teams in the other three teams, but yeah, I feel good about them being able to do it this time.
All right, I'm with you. Fighting Illini will be victorious. They'll be the world champions. They'll be the champions of college basketball or men's college basketball. I'm with you 100% of that. And Alden and I will be watching together because it'll be a Monday night. And I've watched every championship game from the same place since 1996. So I'll be watching again. Yes, I remember those painful losses in 05 and 89. Oh God, I remember Derrick Rose. I count that as an Illini game, even though he went to Memphis. I remember that may be more painful than all when he missed that. Anyway, neither here nor there. Illini will win. Alden, thank you very much for coming on the show, putting up with me. I appreciate it. I'll see you on Monday. All right.
Indeed.
We'll be victorious. Not only will the Illini be victorious, but Team Trouble.
Baby. Watch out for trouble.
Watch out for trouble. All right. That's the great Alden Loury. I also want to thank producer Chris. He does an outstanding job. And I know that the entire Team Trouble agrees with when I say, hey, producer Chris, give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. Peace and love, everybody.